how do you get your kid to retain information? And there are several parts to this. One of them being narration, which I will do a more extensive video on soon. I'm recording some footage of my children narrating, well, my one child, my others like to pretend. And if you read the book called Know and Tell, in that book is the importance of narration and what it does to your brain when you narrate. The reason why these videos take me so long to make is because I've been reading for several years and I'm trying to take all of the things that have impacted me that I've written down in my Commonplace, which is another way to retain information. Don't expect to retain everything you've come across. Keep a Commonplace. And a Commonplace is just a notebook designated for writing down everything that you've come across that has been impactful. And you write it all down in a Commonplace. Some people go so far as to categorize it on index cards. And when they want to pull information about a certain topic, they can do so like that because they just simply cannot keep it all in their mind. But I just have a Commonplace with several different thoughts. So when I make a video about habits, or I make a video about discipline or narration, I go to my Commonplace where I take years of reading. I go to all my Commonplace books. You save them, obviously. This is my newest one. And you just read back on quotes or paragraphs, little blurbs taken from a book or a speech or a sermon, whatever. And I read all of my Commonplace entries about that topic. And I try to make it into a concise video, which is why these videos take so long for me to create, because I'm referencing years of reading in these Commonplace books, and I try to take everything that has been impactful to me about that certain topic and make it into like a 15-minute video, which is why these take me so long to make. So that's the second thing. Narration is the first thing, commonplacing is the second thing, and the third thing to help you retain information is teach someone what you've learned about. That's sort of like narration. When you receive information, there are certain different pathways that it can go, and your brain digests it differently when you receive it than when you speak it or teach it to someone else or narrate it back. When I was growing up, I went to public school and I hardly retained a thing about history, and I was never taught geography. All of this stuff just blew right past me because I just memorized it as quickly as I could to get through a test, and I never thought about it. Now that I'm homeschooling my children, when I'm teaching about different wars and what took place, I'm reading the information, and then I also teach him about it. And when I teach it to him, I retain it. And now I can remember all kinds of different tribes and places in the world and the timeline of when things happened because I've taught it. Narrate it, commonplace it, and teach it to someone else. Another way that you can retain information for your children is to create, I think they call them unit studies, which is what I was talking about in How I Homeschool, a day in a life of a homeschool, what I do in a day or something like that. I'll link the video in the description. But I talk about how I take each subject and I create a unit study. So our most recent one has been bodies of water. And so the history I chose had to do with bodies of water. The geography was about bodies of water. The reason why a unit study helps you to retain things is because some of those subjects are more interesting to you depending on the type of person God created you to be. So learning about something that you're very passionate about, like for my son, he loves history and he's okay with geography and other things like that, but because his love for history is deep, he takes all of these supplements that he's learned in a unit study and he remembers them to add to his ideas about what is happening in this story about history. So having supporting subjects and linking them all together, relating it to something that you already know, helps you to retain information. Another thing that helps you retain information is to stop multitasking. If you're not living in the present, I have a good video about that. You probably have seen that before you've seen this one because it's one of my more popular videos about living right now. That helps you to remember information. If you were sort of multitasking, which is a huge waste of time, and I'll make a video about that also, your brain isn't in a state where it's going to retain much. That's why it's so important when you're reading to your child to not interrupt the reading. In the last video, I discussed what I do before a homeschool day, and I talk about pre-reading and prepping the lesson so that I'm prepared to not have interruptions, and I cover all of the possible questions my child might have for a reading prior to the reading so that I'm not interrupting it several different times to open up a map or look up something online or explain something to him. That helps to not create a multitasking atmosphere and to help him to have focus. I will make a video also on the habit of attention. If you feel like your kid can't pay attention, there's a way to fix that, and I'm going to make a video on that also. And another way to retain information is to make it interesting. So what I spoke about before in another video of mine about how we read living books, because living books are interesting. Instead of just reading a data sheet full of dry facts that you'll hardly recall, if it's in story form, written in a beautiful way, the chances are you will relate it to something that you've experienced in your life, or you will imagine it or create a relationship with the story and retain it better. So for my children in our school, we read living books for that reason. A concept can't just be like read or heard. It has to be discussed and taught, written, chewed on. I'll make a video also about the art of ruminating on something that you've learned. You need silence and time to think about what you've just read so that your mind can digest it. And as far as retaining information, these lessons for my 6-year-old, when I'm talking about doing math or reading to him, it's only 10 or 20 minutes at a time for each thing, and then we move on to something else. 10 minutes is not very long at all. I'm not sitting there for a full hour expecting my kids to focus on me at age 6. So retaining information would be narrating it, commonplacing it, teaching what you've learned to someone else, relating it to something you already know, stop multitasking, and then make it interesting. And then one of the more important things that I'm going to make a separate video about is ruminating about it, digesting it, thinking about it, absorbing it. And here's a quote about that. This is going to be a more detailed video also after. I'm going to make the narration video, and then I'm going to make the ruminating video. And here's a quote about rumination. Before the mind can be stirred to action in discussion, it must have been actively at rest in reflection. Isn't that beautiful? All right, thanks for sticking with me. My next video is going to be a fun one. Then I'm going to do the narrating one. Then I'm going to do the ruminating one, and several others as they come about in requests. But I've got years of commonplacing and I want to make very concise videos to try to help you, just to try to share with you all the fun ideas I've been impacted by in the last several years that I've been reading and commonplacing. Have a wonderful day.